The story of the British Empire begins not with conquest, but with trade. It was the lure of exotic goods, spices and wealth that set the stage for an empire that would span the globe. In the late 16th and early 17th centuries, English explorers and merchants, spurred by the promise of new markets and riches, embarked on daring voyages across the globe. These voyages were fraught with danger, from treacherous seas to unknown lands, but the potential rewards were immense. These early pioneers, like Sir Francis Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh, established the first tentative footholds of British influence in distant lands. Their exploits were celebrated back home, and they became national heroes, inspiring further expeditions. They established trading posts in the East Indies, challenging the dominance of Portuguese and Spanish rivals. These posts were not just commercial hubs, but also strategic points of influence, allowing the British to project power far from their shores. These early ventures were driven by the powerful East India Company, chartered in 1600. The company was granted a monopoly on trade in the East Indies, giving it immense power and influence. This company, with its own army and navy, would become a key player in the expansion of the British Empire. It operated almost like a state within a state, with the ability to wage war, negotiate treaties, and govern territories. It secured trading rights in India, laying the foundation for what would become the most valuable possession in the British Crown. The wealth generated from Indian trade would fuel the growth of the British economy and finance further expansion. The company's focus on profit, however, would also sow the seeds of exploitation and conflict. The pursuit of wealth often came at the expense of local populations, leading to tensions and uprisings. The early 17th century also saw the first permanent English settlements in North America. These settlements were driven by a mix of economic opportunity and the desire for religious freedom. Jamestown, established in 1607, marked the beginning of English colonization in Virginia. It was a precarious start, with settlers facing starvation, disease, and conflict with Native American tribes. This was followed by Plymouth in 1620. Founded by Puritan refugees seeking religious freedom. The Pilgrims' journey on the Mayflower and their subsequent settlement became a foundational myth of American history. These early colonies, facing hardship and conflict with Native American tribes, were the humble beginnings of what would become the United States of America. The settlers' resilience and determination laid the groundwork for future expansion and development. The Caribbean, with its lucrative sugar plantations, also became a target for English expansion. The tropical climate and fertile soil made it an ideal location for growing sugarcane, which was in high demand in Europe. The capture of Jamaica from Spain in 1655 provided England with a major sugar-producing colony. This acquisition was a significant boost to the British economy, as sugar became one of the most profitable commodities of the time. This acquisition, however, came at a brutal cost, as the indigenous population was decimated and replaced by enslaved Africans, forever entwining the history of the British Empire with the transatlantic slave trade. The human suffering and exploitation that underpinned this system would leave a lasting legacy of pain and injustice. The 18th century witnessed the consolidation and expansion of British power in North America, the Caribbean, and Asia. This period was marked by significant geopolitical shifts and the establishment of British dominance in various parts of the world. The rivalry with France, a global power with its own colonial ambitions, came to a head in a series of conflicts, culminating in the 7 Years' War from 1756 to 1763. This war was fought on multiple continents, involving numerous battles and significant military engagements. This decisive victory established British dominance in North America and India, marking a turning point in the history of the British Empire. The British were able to expand their territories and influence, setting the stage for future imperial endeavors. In North America, the British gained control of Canada from France, securing their dominance over the eastern half of the continent. This acquisition not only expanded British territory, but also increased their strategic and economic power in the region. This victory, however, came at a price. The financial burden of the war led to significant debt for the British government. The cost of the war led to increased taxation of the American colonies, sparking resentment and ultimately contributing to the American Revolution. The colony's desire for independence grew stronger as they faced what they perceived as unfair economic policies and lack of representation.
The Caribbean, meanwhile, became a cornerstone of the British economy. The region's strategic location and fertile lands made it an ideal place for establishing profitable plantations. The sugar plantations, worked by enslaved Africans, generated immense wealth for British plantation owners and merchants. The labor-intensive nature of sugar cultivation meant that a large enslaved workforce was essential for maintaining high levels of production. This trade in human misery fueled the Industrial Revolution in Britain, but left a lasting legacy of racial inequality and exploitation in the Caribbean. The wealth generated from the plantations helped finance industrial advancements, but the human cost was immense and long-lasting.
In India, the East India Company, capitalizing on the decline of the Mughal Empire, gradually expanded its influence. The company's strategic and often ruthless tactics allowed it to gain control over vast territories. The company's victory at the Battle of Plassey in 1757 marked a turning point, establishing its control over Bengal, a region of immense wealth and strategic importance. This victory was not just a military success, but also a significant economic gain for the British. This victory laid the foundation for British rule in India, which would last for almost 2 centuries. The British established a complex administrative system and infrastructure that would deeply influence the region's development and history. The 19th century witnessed the zenith of the British Empire, with its territories spanning the globe and its power seemingly unchallenged. The British Empire was often described as the empire on which the sun never sets, highlighting its vast expanse and global influence. From the Americas to Africa and from Asia to the Pacific, British rule extended far and wide, bringing with it both progress and conflict. At the heart of this vast empire lay India, often referred to as the jewel in the crown. This title was not just a reflection of India's immense wealth and resources, but also its strategic importance in the British imperial strategy. India was central to Britain's global dominance, serving as a crucial link in the chain of colonies. India's vast population and resources provided Britain with raw materials, markets for its manufactured goods, and a strategic foothold in Asia. The subcontinent's cotton, tea, spices, and other commodities fueled British industries and trade networks. Indian markets, in turn, absorbed British manufactured goods, creating a cycle of economic dependency that benefited the British economy immensely. Following the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, a bloody uprising that shook British rule to its core, the British government took direct control of India from the East India Company. This marked a significant shift in the administration of India, leading to the establishment of the British Raj. The rebellion, also known as the First War of Indian Independence, highlighted the growing discontent among Indians and the need for a more direct and stringent control by the British Crown. Queen Victoria was proclaimed Empress of India in 1877, symbolizing the country's importance within the empire. This proclamation was not just a ceremonial act, but a declaration of the British Crown's direct involvement and vested interest in the Indian subcontinent. It was a move to solidify British authority and integrate India more closely into the imperial fold.
Under the British Raj, India underwent significant social, economic, and political transformations. The British introduced new administrative systems, reformed land revenue policies, and established a network of institutions that reshaped Indian society. These changes were aimed at consolidating British control and extracting maximum economic benefit from the colony. The British built railways, irrigation systems, and introduced modern education and legal systems. These developments were often touted as the benefits of British rule, bringing modernization and progress to India. The railways connected distant parts of the country, facilitating trade and movement, while irrigation projects aimed to boost agricultural productivity. However, British rule was also marked by economic exploitation, racial discrimination, and the suppression of Indian culture and nationalism. The benefits of British infrastructure and administrative reforms were often overshadowed by the harsh realities of colonial exploitation. Indian labourers faced grueling conditions, and traditional industries were disrupted, leading to widespread poverty and social unrest. The Indian independence movement, gaining momentum in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, challenged the very foundations of British rule. Nationalist leaders and organizations began to mobilize the masses, advocating for self-rule and the end of colonial domination. The movement was characterized by a series of protests, strikes, and acts of civil disobedience that gradually eroded British authority. The struggle for Indian independence, led by figures like Mahatma Gandhi, would ultimately lead to the dismantling of the British Empire. Gandhi's philosophy of non-violent resistance inspired millions and became a powerful tool against colonial oppression. The relentless efforts of Indian nationalists culminated in the historic moment of independence in 1947, marking the end of British rule and the beginning of a new era for India.
Section 4, The Sun Never Sets, Victorian Britain and Global Hegemony. The Victorian era, spanning from 1837 to 1901, marked the height of British power and influence. The phrase, the sun never sets on the British Empire, really captured the vastness of its dominion, which, encompassed territories on every continent.
Britain's economic and military might was unmatched, allowing it to project its power across the globe. The Industrial Revolution, fueled by technological innovations and access to raw materials from its colonies, transformed Britain into the workshop of the world. British manufactured goods from textiles to machinery flooded global markets.
This economic dominance underpinned Britain's military superiority, allowing it to maintain a powerful navy that secured its trade routes and protected its interests abroad. The Victorian era also witnessed the rise of a distinctive imperial ideology. British imperialists justified their rule by emphasizing their supposed civilizing mission, arguing that they were bringing progress, enlightenment, and good governance to backward peoples.
This paternalistic and often racist worldview, however, masked the realities of exploitation and oppression that characterized much of British rule.
Section 5, Winds of Change, the Seeds of Decline in the Early 20th Century. The early 20th century witnessed the first cracks in the edifice of British power. The rise of industrial rivals, such as Germany and the United States, challenged Britain's economic dominance.
The Boer War, from 1899 to 1902, a costly conflict in South Africa, exposed the limitations of British military power and fueled anti-imperialist sentiment at home.
The First World War, from 1914 to 1918, proved to be a turning point in the history of the British Empire. Though Britain and its allies emerged victorious, the war had a devastating impact on the British economy and manpower.
The war also fueled nationalist movements in the colonies, as soldiers from across the empire fought and died for a distant motherland. The interwar period saw the rise of anti-colonial movements across the empire. In India, Mahatma Gandhi's non-violent resistance movement gained momentum, demanding an end to British rule.
In Africa, nationalist leaders emerged, challenging the legitimacy of colonial rule and demanding self-determination.